Morning, everybody. Jim Benton here from Chorus. It's April 15th. It's Wednesday, and excited to be kicking off with everyone. Today, I've got Roderick Jefferson with us, CEO of Roderick Jefferson Associates, a sales enablement firm working with small and mid-sized businesses. And Roderick, I realized briefly that we worked together in 1997, or at least I was there in 1997 back at AT&T. And we literally just put this together a few minutes ago.
It's
Good to
crazy.
see you.
Such a small world. It is the constant reminder, be nice to everyone because you never know when you're going to see them again.
That's a good point. We worked in a unique opportunity at AT&T. It just had a special team back then. I'm curious if you have any learnings that you're still using today from those days.
Yeah, absolutely. To your point, it was such a unique time that it was, just as a quick reminder, we had just started selling something called the internet with AT&T WorldNet, and also we were selling websites. And what I realized from that I still learn today is that in order to sell anything, don't sell. It's really about education. So we were educating the public on what it was we were doing, how different we were from the old former AT&T of just dial tone and phone sets and such. And it still lives with this day. And I think the biggest learning I take away from that I live with and I continue to teach my team is continue to have conversations and stop giving presentations.
Love it. I love it. I just love that you're still doing that. That was my first job out of college. And the first 2 weeks in training was, here's a white pages and go foot canvas, go knock on the doors of businesses in Silicon Valley and get them to use it. And I still think to today, it's just taught me to be bold and making sure that you create this wow experience. Because if you don't stand out, no one's going to talk to you.
Can't agree more. I remember both of us. It was, here's a Thomas guide, here's your territory. Have at it.
Exactly right. So we've come a long way. I've looked at, you just had an awesome career at Oracle and Salesforce and PayPal and just across at Marketo. Super excited to have you joining us today.
Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
And we're going to dig in. I wanted to get your perspective on a few different stats. I mean, the biggest thing we're going to look at is our update of just executives joining sales and buying conversations as we kick off Q2. I also wanted to get your quick input on the weekly kind of core stat of looking at overall meeting productivity. We've been showing that it dropped in the last 2 weeks, 11%. What are you seeing out there as you talk to your clients? How is sales productivity holding up right now?
I think that is accurate across the board. And I think there are a number of reasons why this is happening. One is it was the initial big shock of doing business completely different than any of us had ever done before. And second was there was a time we could all forecast and we knew within certainty of a few points where we were going to come in. Well, the bottom fell out of things with the pandemic. And the other piece is, excuse me, I think that we had gotten very comfortable with doing things the way we've always done it. And we were all shaken to our core to realize that we have to get comfortable with being uncomfortable. And that's going to take a little while.
Yeah. I mean, I'm slightly surprised how well everyone's done as they've moved home. But one of the key stats that we wanted to show this week, so kind of new for today, looking at the week of April 6th, is we're continuing to see now 3 weeks in a row a significant increase in executive level and director levels on call. So, 47% increase over baseline. That's up from 44% last week. And so what we're seeing is that leaders are joining sales calls right now in record numbers, even past the close of Q1 into Q2. Why do you think that is? What's going on out there?
Well, I think there's never been a time in history where it's been more important to lead with credibility, humanity, compassion, and EQ. And I'm starting to see that from the leaders now and this is no disrespect to any sales leaders, but sales leaders have been viewed as kind of ivory towered. You guys run the show. We do it out in the field. And I say we because I'm still a sales guy myself. And what's changed is it requires that level of credibility, but also, buying decisions the time frame is lengthened. It's important to show that it's not just the AE or the salesperson or the BDR, but that the director and VP all the way up to CRO is invested in this. You, Mr. and Mrs. Customer, matter to us. It's important that we're here. And I also want to show and validate that the promises we make and the solutions that we're putting forward towards you, I stand behind it and I stand with it. And I'm also accessible. And that's another big thing right now is the accessibility of the humanity I talked about just now. And that is, I'm accessible, I'm here for you, I'm here behind you, and I'm here with you. Are you seeing the same thing out there, Jim?
Yeah, I've been using the word that I feel like I'm teleporting right now, where you can go for so many different places and within minutes, including, family dinner at the end of the day after hours of Zoom. I'm curious if you think that just the fact that we're on Zoom, we're on virtual meetings right now at such a high level, that executives are finding it easier to be joining these calls, as you just mentioned, and whether we'll see this trend continue as we kind of reopen businesses.
I'll answer that in 2 words, yes and yes. And yes, because now the executive doesn't have to travel somewhere. I don't have to get on a plane and go out into my patch or into my region. I can jump on right now. So that opens up time and availability to be able to jump into those calls. And also, excuse me, I'm fighting off a cold. That's all it is.
Oh,
Be concerned. And yes, it's important now for those leaders to show their face, not only their face, but again, to show that they're engaged and they're interactive and that clients and customers and prospects matter right now.
you mentioned business travel. I was reading yesterday, Bill Gates, when he talks about the future, his comment yesterday was he doesn't think business travel will return. I mean, of course, people will get on planes, but not at the levels. He thinks that specifically, at least his quote yesterday, was that might be one thing that really does change going forward. And this accessibility, in some ways, I get excited if that's the case, that our leaders, we all need to meet in different ways. But if we can be in more places, this seems like a win for the sales community and a win for buyers out there to have more access to the sales leaders.
Yeah, it's a huge win, especially for the buyers, because look, as leaders, we've always had a single wish. What if I could clone myself and be in multiple places at the same time? Well, be careful what you ask for, because I think what Zoom and others have done is found a way to replicate the sales leaders. And to your point from Bill Gates, I think that this will be the new normal. And there's been some push and some nudge out of our comfort zone. And I think it's a good thing. There are some things that we've just always done the same way. I don't think are effective right now or even required. I will say that I don't believe that there's a company out there that can say you no longer have a work from home policy, especially if the productivity level stays up. So with this being the new norm, let's get comfortable with being uncomfortable. Let's embrace it. Let's figure out how to make this even more of a valuable opportunity to share a conversation and be authentic with our prospects and with our customers and with our clients. And let's model this for the folks that are watching us in regards to how to be a leader.
I think it's right. So from all the years of training and the enablement focus you have, Roderick, I'm curious what advice you'd have as more leaders are joining, both advice for leaders. If you were to train them joining these calls, what do they need to do? And just what are you telling teams in general as leaders join calls? How does it change that dynamic? What can they do to make this effective?
Well, explain first and foremost to your team the why you're joining the call, not just the what of I'm going to join your call. Why I'm joining it is because of these reasons, and then articulate those reasons. Also share with them that, I'm not here to spot check you or to overlook. I'm really here to support you and also to show, again, that level of credibility of both of us coming in as a unified front end, as a team to your customer and prospect. This is actually a good thing for all involved. And I think the articulation of the why right now is as if not more important than the what leaders are doing by joining those calls. Also, it shows that it now requires a different level of prep with your sales leader than you did before. Before, you could just send over a brief and say, here's what we're doing. Now, let's take a few minutes as a sales leader. I think a great practice, best practice. Let's take a few minutes. Let's talk through this thing and make sure we're on the same page so that no one goes off the rails or in a direction that wasn't planned. Yeah. Also, so that it looks as though and it appears and it shows that we are a unified front. And that way, what we're doing is we're creating a comfort zone for the prospect and for the customer that all of us can be enveloped in.
Yeah, I think it's, you got me thinking about just sort of, we track talk time on these calls. And I'm curious what you think, if you had to throw out a number where the leadership should be talking versus the AEs or the individuals that are managing these accounts. If you have any sense of that, where would you throw out the perspective?
80-20. And I think it should be 80% the salesperson AE talking and 20% with the sales leader. And again, I go back to the point I just made. The sales leader should be there to support the person, not to overrun. We don't need super sales leaders putting on capes like we've all seen in our sales days. Remember, when this is all over, your salesperson still needs to maintain a level of credibility, and you cannot and must not be the go-to person for your prospect or for your customer. They still should be working with the AE, and you should be there to support them and envelop them. Otherwise,
it's a fantastic point.
Undercut them.
Yeah, I think that's a fantastic point. And you need to, for the leverage points, you just need your best people to be those best at managing those relationships and playing, the roles that we all need to go play.
Absolutely.
Roderick, the other data point that we're looking at on the other side is buyers. And so the buyer side, the executives at both director and executive level, they're also joining these calls at unprecedented levels. 40% over the baseline of pre-COVID-19 on the executive level and 33% on the director level. So a really strong shift in the last 3 weeks. Why do you think the buyers are joining more, and what do we need to do differently when we know that they're going to be on these calls?
Well, I think there's a couple of reasons. One is they need to be more informed and understand at a deeper level than previous to the COVID pandemic. They being the executives of your buyers. And secondly, let's be honest, their name is on the line. They're signing for this. So they've got to make sure that what is being put in place is of the highest value possible, because budgets are tight right now, tighter than they've been in a long time. So if I'm going to make this purchase and I'm going to sign off on it, I need to feel with absolutely no doubt that this is moving the needle that's going to do one of two things: either decrease time to revenue or increase productivity. If for any other reason, there will be no signatures.
Do you find that clients need to change their message? They need, on the value point, the fact that this is so much tied to ROI right now, sales needs to, be driving that point more than ever. I mean, are you finding that teams are training their entire groups to be more focused on that at this point? I mean, we've got the empathy as well. The balancing of these two are sometimes tricky.
Certainly. Well, I think that there is a new acronym that has shown up that is equally as important as the ROI, the return on investment, and that is the COI. What is the cost of inaction if you do nothing right now? Are you falling behind? Because eventually this pandemic is going to pass. We don't know when, but eventually we will get through this. And so when we come out, I'm seeing there are three distinct types of customers out there right now. One is we're going to batten down the hatches and just shut down everything. The second is that we're going to move forward cautiously and do some things, but not as much as we had planned to do. And the third is, you know what, we've got to go full steam ahead, because when this comes out, we want to be positioned and prepared for what's going to happen after this. Not a lot of the third, I'll be honest, but preparation right now is important. The messaging has to be different to the prospect, and also has to be different back from the prospect. And again, that's where I think that COI tied together with ROI, that cost of inaction, really now is a completely different messaging that is resonating well out in the real world, because it's where we are.
It's interesting when you think about the buyers joining, and if we think that this continues, just as we think sales leaders will be on it, you're starting to get different levels of personas on there. If you're targeting a CRO, now you might have a director of sales, and now they've brought the CRO, or you've got CROs and CEOs. How do you think that changes the messaging? Who do we focus the message to in those calls sometimes as we start to see those different levels?
Well, I agree. It's definitely become multi-leveled today. And I think you have to focus, as hard as it sounds, unilaterally. And you've got to understand what's top of mind for that director, what's top of mind for that VP, and not alienating that sales director, because again, after this is over, that's still going to be your primary contact. So what you have to figure out now is how to message and make them the hero, them the sales director, the point of contact as well, and then also bringing in the value of that CRO and showing that you value it. But at the same time, I want you to know that the person I'm working with, Mr. and Miss Sales Director, is doing an incredible job. We have collaboratively come up with a plan moving forward, is the statement that has to be made. We have collaboratively come up with a plan to move forward. And what we want to do is sanity check this with you. So you're not alienating one, but you're not elevating the other.
Well, that's great feedback. I mean, that that makes a ton of sense about knowing who your buyer is, knowing who you need to make the partnerships with, and coming off as a team. And I can see many, this is new territory to have so many buyer execs on the calls. And if you play it the wrong way, it's not healthy. But
No.
making sure that you know who you're going to be working with going forward and how to set this up to be successful and to come off as a team. I think that's terrific feedback for everybody listening. One last data point here. We've shared this before. It's continuing as we look at the most recent data for April 6th. We're looking at just payment terms. It's one indication as we look at different signals in the meetings, but payment terms have shifted dramatically away from net 30. So we are seeing a shift to net 60, net 90, and a bigger conversation from teams requesting that or demanding that. What do we need to do with our sales teams in terms of helping them have these conversations or working through these types of questions that they're getting from a finance perspective?
First, before I answer that, I want to say this to my fellow consultants. I feel your pain. Of these, it's different for a major corporation versus a consultant. So I want to put that out there for them. But to answer your question, you've got to expect it and you've got to plan for it. But as I said earlier, budgets are tight and spending is discriminate now. It's not indiscriminate as it was at one point. So right now it's about making sure that you're showing value. It's about making sure that you understand that this is going to happen. And it's also about not pointing fingers back at your client and going, wait, but you said it was 30. Now you're moving to 45. What can we do here? Is there any wiggle room at all? If not, then that's just the way things are. But because of the budgets being tightened, not because of the individual. So don't make it personal. Right? This is just what's happening today.
I think, look, if this is a key data point for your business, if you need net 30 versus 60, 90, this is a great data point in my perspective to build a program, create an incentive, create alignment that, we can do a pricing discount if we have the right terms. But I think before this was taken for granted, it wasn't a high pressure point, as you can look at even March 2nd. We were 76% of deals were net 30, now it's 56. I just think that this is the data that, if this is important to the business, create an incentive, align with your partners and your customers to create those right terms. So, that's what it's all about, unlocking the data.
Yeah, it's about working together and collaborating and
that's
trying
exactly right.
to find, look, fair, we both know is not neither a business nor an adult word. So let's take that out of the conversation and let's replace that with how can we find a way to make this mutually equitable?
I love it. We're going to launch, Roderick, a quick poll for the folks that are on live. So this is out there for everyone to vote on. And the question today is, have you had more executive presence on your call? So just testing the data of what we're both seeing, what the audience is seeing here. And right now answers are coming in. And so the questions are, have you seen more executive presence in your call? Yes, buying side most often. Yes, selling side most often. Yes, both. Or no, no change. And right now, seeing the data actually split between yes, buying side most often, yes, both. So 66% on that, with 33% of the group saying no change. So 2/3 are saying yes, it's happening on both sides, essentially. 1/3 saying not quite yet. And I think the segment data we've shown shows it's a little bit different for different groups out there right now.
That's interesting, Jim, because I'd be curious now to segment those answers down to what segment are folks selling into? Are you seeing this more at the higher enterprise, further upstream, or are you seeing it more in that kind of SMB space? And
yeah,
I think that's where the delineation really starts to happen.
That's a great point. I'm sure it's different in those different classifications. Hey, Roderick, final thought for you as we just showcase who's joining us tomorrow. But any advice to go-to-market leaders right now? Anything that you'd want to share as kind of a final parting thought?
Absolutely. And what I would share is, although we've all focused on EQ and compassion and humanity, it's at a higher must-need level right now.
Yeah.
Remember, these aren't your SDRs, BDRs, your AEs, whatever acronym you may call them. These are people that are trying to figure out how to get through this. They're looking to you for leadership right now. And leadership today has to be a verb. It has to be an action. It can't be a title anymore. So always focus on the why, not just the what you're asking folks to do. But it may require even more explanation now than you're comfortable with or that you've given before. But remember, we're in a new normal. which means we have to shift the way we interact first and foremost with people, then with sales and with prospects and et cetera. And these people inherently want to do the right thing. And what they're looking for is, what is the right thing in the new normal today? And sales leaders, CROs, et cetera, we're counting on you to be able to articulate that with authenticity, in an authentic manner, in a real human compassionate manner. And we all strive to have high EQ. Right now, we don't care about what the number is for your EQ. We care about how your EQ is shared out to the numbers.
I think it's fantastic. I think that the empathy and I think the authenticity, which we've been focusing on, is just shining right now. And it's the magical moment for sales. Roderick, thank you for joining us. For all of our fellow AT&T people of 20 years ago, the Bill Harris, the Charlie Youngers, the Michael Matthews, so great to kind of reconnect. And this is just an awesome way to start the day, Roderick. Thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity. I appreciate it, Jim, and great connecting again.
Yeah, likewise. I'll see you around. Cheers.
All righty.